Ray, thanks for popping on. We'll see you on Monday. Back in
All the
studio.
best. Have a good week. Thank you. Bye.
And let's bring in now National Senator M.Canavan. Matt, great to see you. I want to get across some of the other big stories today because this was extraordinary. The Albanese government has been making such a song and dance about how it wants to host this climate change conference. Now, finally, today we find out that they've said that, Turkey will host it. But Chris Bowen made this big deal about being the president of negotiations. Have a look at this.
It would be great if Australia could have it all, but we can't have it all. As COP president of negotiations, I would have all the powers of the COP presidency to manage, to handle the negotiations, to appoint co-facilitators, to prepare draft text, and to issue the cover decision.
Matt, and now Albanese is calling this an outstanding result when we've lost the conference that we didn't want anyway, by the way. Your reaction?
Sharri, I should just clarify, I desperately wanted it. I thought it could be the greatest campaign tool for me going around to see all these people fly in on private jets and just to remind everybody why this is such a hypocritical load of rubbish, this whole net zero agenda. But look, I always thought it was unlikely that we'd do it, and particularly since the government now has a fight on its hands. I think Anthony Albanese here is running scared. He's running scared now. From an opposition that's setting the agenda, saying that maybe we should focus a bit more on our own country. Maybe the government should focus on getting energy prices down like they promised they would before spending billions of dollars hosting 40,000 self-entitled hypocrites from around the world arriving on private jets to lecture us all about how terrible we are. So that's clearly what's happened here. That's why they've flown the white flag, because now the government realises they have a fight on their hands, and finally the opposition's taking the fight up to them on behalf of the Australian people. Now, in terms of Chris Bowen, yes, it was a little embarrassing seeing his attempt at a dismount here. I only wish he could become COP president and no longer be the energy minister. That would be a great thing for our country. I'd happily ship him off over to Turkey and see what he can do over there, because he's not doing anything for our own country. But what he seems to be suggesting is that he'd do both, the energy minister job and the COP president job. Shouldn't he focus on his day job right now? Shouldn't he focus on bringing down energy prices, making sure we protect manufacturing jobs in this country? Because he's not doing that very well. He doesn't deserve a promotion.
No, exactly right. And just to clarify, the reason I didn't want this conference being in Australia, apart from having to deal with all these, billionaire hypocrites flying in on their private planes is the cost, up to $2 billion. It just makes me feel sick, the waste of our taxpayer dollars. Extraordinary. But I agree, he's now going to call himself the president, Chris Bowen. So cringe. Matt, I also want to ask you about the extraordinary testimony we heard from several of the bank chief executives in the Senate this week, where they expressed some concern about the net zero direction as well. Now, this must have been surprising for you to hear these remarks from the major banks.
Look, there's a contradiction here. The banks have been some of the biggest boosters of the net zero agenda. They've all were signatories to this thing called the Net Zero Banking Alliance. It's actually now suspended its operations because almost every other country, every other bank in every other country had left. Our banks went down with a sinking ship, unfortunately. And yet they have been remarkably honest about the costs of net zero at these House of Representative committees this week. I've got to give credit to people like Henry Pike and Simon Kennedy, Aaron Violi, who've been extracting these tidbits from them. We've seen one of the bank CEOs say that net zero could kill the patient. The medicine might be too strong and actually kill the patient. The question then has to arise, why are the banks continuing to refuse finance to things that can make money for our country? We had the remarkable admission from one of the banks that they don't finance gas exports. They'll only finance gas operations that supply domestic energy. If it involves exports, they don't supply it. Gas is our third biggest export in our nation. He said glibly, other nations can do that. why would our own banks say no to a profit-making opportunity? Aren't they meant to have a fiduciary duty to their shareholders? And the way gas markets work, you can't just segment imports and exports. If you're not going to support the exports, that means you are also not going to support gas production in this country. And we have some of the highest gas prices in the world right now. So why are the banks not supporting energy production in this country?
Not good point. Matt, to another topic, just finally, that you've been speaking about in the Senate. Michael Schellenberger, the journalist, has also been really investigating this. Australia's E-Safety Commissioner, Julie Inman-Grant. Now, it looks like she's going to be hauled before the US Congress over the government's Online Safety Act. They say there's serious censorship concerns. Now, the US House Judiciary Committee Chair, Jim Jordan, has written a letter about this. Can you tell us what this is exactly about?
Look, this stems from the decision last year from the Safety Commissioner to seek a global takedown of content relating to the stabbing of Bishop Mari in Western Sydney, a shocking incident that occurred. And you might recall that in the days after that, so a lot of the images were being posted on social media, and the E-Safety Commissioner sought to not only remove that from Australian servers, if you like, Australian viewers, but also globally. It was an unbelievable overreach from an Australian agency. Her decision actually got struck down in court ultimately, along with a bunch of other decisions she has made. She's lost in court time and time again. In my view, this is an organisation that's out of control, way beyond the remit of what Parliament set for the E-Safety Commissioner when it was established. And now there's some blowback. There's obviously a country like America, which enshrines free speech in its constitution, is going to take a dim view to agencies in other countries seeking to restrict the free speech of Americans. So, look, fortunately, it's been reined in a bit by the courts, but I have huge concerns that the E-Safety Commissioner and the agency itself are still seeking to silence the free speech of Australians in a way that was not intended by the Parliament when it was established.
Yeah, it's highly concerning. And well, we'll see how what the interrogation is like when she does finally face Congress. That'll be fascinating. M.Canavan, great to have you as always on a Thursday. Thank you.